I'm sure a lot of you will have this question as to how do you go about analyzing SimCATs. Now, you already know that taking a SimCAT is primarily because of two reasons. One, to improve your content, be it in terms of actual concepts or application of concepts. And the second thing is to get used to the entire test taking routine, wherein you are sitting at one place for 2 hours and facing sections one after the other. Now, how exactly do you go about analyzing your SimCATs? Now, to start with, the first thing that you need to do before you take a SimCAT is to set an objective. Now, you can't really do any activity without having a predefined objective in mind. Now, there could be a lot of different objectives that you might have before you go about taking a SimCAT. The most obvious objective could be to attempt a higher number of questions by trying out a strategy that allows you to do that particular thing. Or you can divide your entire test taking into different rounds and then go about solving the easier questions in the first round and then going for the moderate to difficult questions in the second round. Your objective could also be to leave questions with a lot of discipline, because you might get stuck in a particular question and you might end up wasting valuable time. Your objective could also be to apply a concept in a particular situation when it comes to actual test taking, and so on. Now, there are a lot of objectives that exist. You can have one or many of the objectives that I just mentioned, or you can have some objective of your own before you take a test. But make sure that you are not taking the test simply because it's time to take a test. Just take the test because you want to test yourself. You want to see if you have attained a particular objective or not. So that is the first thing that you need to do. Now, once you are done with the test, you will end up getting your score, your percentile, your ranks, and so on. Now, beyond the obvious things that exist, wherein you will see what score you have got and whether you should be happy with that particular score or not, what percentile you have got, whether you will be happy with your percentile or not, and so on, you have to go a bit beyond that. And for that, we have 3 major things that you will need to look at. The first thing that we are looking at is question-wise analysis. Now, when it comes to the status of a question, when it comes to reviewing a particular SimCAT, there could be 3 things that would have happened. The first thing is you would have attempted that particular question and you would have got it right. Now, if you have got a particular question right, it does not mean that you have achieved competence in a particular topic. You might have guessed that answer purely because it was a theta question and you needed to feed something into the answer option. Or you might have done it, but you might not have applied the optimum method that needed to be applied in that particular question. Or you might have done it well and you would have applied the optimum method that was required in that particular question. To understand whether you have done it in the most appropriate way or not, we have video solutions that accompany each and every question that appears at the SimCAT. Now, if your method matches that of the video solution, then most probably you are on track to solve it using the best method come the actual CAT as well. The second scenario is when you have solved a particular question but you have got it wrong. Now, you have to understand at the first level whether the question deserved to be solved or not. Now, let's assume that the question deserved to be solved and you still got it wrong. Now, you have to understand at which level you have made that particular mistake. Was there a mistake when you were reading that particular question? So, say the question asked about strengthening an argument and you ended up weakening the argument. Or you misinterpreted the question. The question asked you something, but you misinterpreted the question and answered something else. Or you did a calculation mistake. So there are these 3 levels at which you could have made a mistake. Now, once you realize that you are making a mistake at a particular level, you have to keep that in mind, and come the next SimCAT, you have to ensure that you are not repeating these mistakes. So let's say if you are making a lot of calculation errors, it might be prudent on your part to pay attention to steps that involve intense calculation and maybe recheck your calculation so that you don't end up making silly errors. The third thing that could happen at a question level is that you would have not solved a question at all. Now again, there is a choice that exists wherein you are deciding not to solve that particular question, or you might not have solved that particular question because you simply couldn't figure out the time to answer that particular question. Now, the first thing is a good thing wherein you have chosen not to solve a particular question and you have left it by choice. The second thing, not so good because you have been forced to not attempt a particular question. What would have happened if you had time and you would have attempted that particular question? Would it have added to your marks or not? Now that is a question that you have to answer. If you are leaving questions which deserve to be solved, then you have to pay attention to that particular question type come the next SimCAT. Now how exactly to figure out whether a question deserves to be solved or not? For that, we have the second element when it comes to the SimCATs, which is called the p-value. Now the p-value is nothing but a mathematical representation of whether a question is solvable or not come the actual test. For that, we have classified questions into three categories: A, B, C. At a very broad level, when we are talking about A, B, C, they mean abhi karo, baad mein karo and chhod do. When it comes to the p-value of a particular question, we basically calculate what percentage of the top 10 percentilers have got that particular question right. Now, why the top 10 percentilers? Because there is a lot of randomness when it comes to the bottom percentiles. And that's why the data that is the most sensitive in this regard is the data of the top 10 percentilers of a section. And that is why the p-value is calculated on the basis of the success of the top 10 percentilers who exist. Now, if a lot of these top 10 percentilers have answered a particular question correctly, it basically means that the question was on the easier side and you had to solve this particular question. As a benchmark, if the p-value of a question is greater than 60, then it means that the question was on the easier side and that you should have solved it. It will be categorized as a type A. On the other hand, if the p-value of a question is between 30 and 60, then it is categorized as B. And you should have solved it maybe, but in the second round. It should not have been your first choice. And the third category is when the p-value is less than 30. Now it tells you that less than 30% of the top 10 percentilers have got this particular question right. And that tells you that it was on the difficult side, and if you would have got stuck in this particular question, then you would have spent valuable time which you would have spent doing something else instead. And that's why these are the questions that you should leave and are categorized as type C. Now, you have done your ABC analysis, you have seen your score and percentile, you have done your question-wise analysis as well. Now, the last thing that you need to understand is AI-enabled adaptive questions practice. Now, in this particular feature, what happens is, for the quant and LRDI sections of proctored SimCATs, we have an AI tool that will generate questions depending on your competence at a particular question type. So let's say, for example, if you have got a particular question wrong, then the AI will give you a similar question to solve. Now, if you solve that particular question correctly, then the AI will increase the level of difficulty of the question and will present you another question. If you get the first question wrong, let's say, then the AI will give you another question which is slightly easier in terms of level of difficulty. Now, this will keep on happening till the time the AI believes that you have achieved competence in a particular question type. So, you have to avail the AI-enabled adaptive practice tool to improve your performance from one SimCAT to the next. Now, when you should be using this tool, we would recommend that you use this tool when you are analyzing a particular SimCAT so that you are progressing on a timely basis. If you use the entire thing at the end, then you might end up with too many gaps in your preparation and you might feel overwhelmed by the amount of work that needs to be put in. So make sure that you are using the AI-enabled adaptive questions practice tool on a regular basis. Now, once you have done with this entire SimCAT analysis, you have to understand how exactly to improve with each ongoing mock. And the insights that you're going to get from these three activities that we mentioned, which is question-wise analysis, the p-value, and the AI-enabled adaptive practice, will become the objectives for your next SimCAT. And you have to understand that you have to keep on taking SimCATs on a consistent basis. You need not lose enthusiasm when you are taking SimCATs purely because it's going to add up towards the end. Even if you don't score as per your expectations at a particular SimCAT, you have to get up, dust yourself off and go for the next SimCAT. If you keep on doing this exercise regularly with a lot of discipline, religiously with a lot of focus and intent, I'm sure that you will improve with each passing mock, and come the day of the test, you will perform to the best of your ability. We hope you use the SimCATs and analyze them thoroughly and keep on improving as you go forward. All the best.